Welcome to the Catbird Quilts. I'm Kathy Martin. For quite some time, I have wondered how much I might be saving by quilting with men's shirts from the thrift store. And today's video, I have an answer for you, and I have a lot to say about it. So stay with me. Two years is how long I have wanted the answer to this question. And this is the way I posed it in my brain. What if I made two quilts, the exact same quilt, one with quilting cottons and long armlet and all of the bells and whistles and the great things, and one I do it on the cheap and use my men's dress shirts from the thrift store, and I wonder what sort of cost savings there might be between them. And in my head, I called this project the Tale of Two Quilts. It's like it was the best of budgets. It was the worst of budgets. So one of the things that people say routinely is quilting is expensive as a hobby, and that can very much be true. But I am a believer in quilting should be accessible to everybody, and when fabric gets really expensive, we can look for alternatives, which is part of what I do. Now, I did not start quilting with shirts because of the cost. It's just what I had. But then as I kind of got into it and realized the fabric is gorgeous and really good quality, then that was another layer. And then I realized, oh gosh, this is like so much cheaper than fabric at the fabric store. I just kind of have been operating like there's a big savings there, but I didn't actually know what the savings actually is or was. And it's complicated because it's comparing apples to oranges. So when you go to the fabric store, if you are fortunate to have a really nice fabric store with quilting cottons in your area, you might buy fat quarters for $3.25 or $3.50 and piece together your quilt based on, fabric that you choose. Whereas if I go to the thrift store and buy a shirt, I'm in for the whole shirt, even if I only use a portion of the shirt. And so doing that cost comparison is kind of tricky. But as I have been quilting a little longer, what I have discovered is, so first of all, not everybody has a really great quilt store in their area. I just assumed that you could buy fat quarters online, and you can, but usually they're in a bundle. Now, you can sometimes get one or two from Etsy, but more often than not, if you're going to buy fat quarters, you get them in a bundle. And even like, for example, I'm so naive. I thought the fat quarter shop, like you could just buy a fat quarter. Which you can't, by the way, if you've been thinking that too. No, base is half a yard. So the reality is that when we are using quilting cottons, a lot of times you have to buy them either in a bundle or in half-yard increments if you want a single specific fabric. And so that is not too far off from buying a whole shirt and then using a portion of it. So I realize that's not, you may not think that's really fair. I don't really think it's fair, but it's apples to oranges. So we're going to roll with that, and I'll get into that further. And then the other part was that I cannot make two of the exact same quilt in time to do this video. So I recruited my friend Jennifer. She's the one that I always recruit to do these fun experiments. This is not scientifically sound. This is just for fun. This is just for our own enjoyment. So she did the one and I did the other. And we decided that what we would do is she would pick a fabric bundle that she liked, use whatever portion that she wanted, and then I would make the exact same quilt in companion and use shirts and really just do it on the cheap. So we did, and it's very eye-opening. And here they are. And I'll show you in a minute. But I wanted to give you the best of budgets, the worst of budgets. If you were to get this pattern from Quilty Love, and I encourage you to do so, it's a great one. It's called Geo Gems. And you read the fabric requirements and you just bought your fabric based on the fabric requirements. I'm going to give you that cost to start with. And so we're going to say we're going with the curated fabric bundle. So Jennifer used the Wildflower Hill bundle from Art Gallery Fabrics, so AGF fabric bundle. And that would be $63.98. If you only used 5, which is what the pattern calls for, 5 of the prints, and you do the math, which let's do the math. So $63.98 divided by the 16 fat quarters that are in it, that is $3.99. So $4 a fat quarter. So if you use 5 of those, that's $20. In the pattern, it calls for 9 fat quarters of a solid. Now, again, you can buy half yards. There's every kind of way to buy them. But if you were to buy a solids bundle from the same place, which I did Fat Quarter Shop, and you may be like, but in fact, actually this whole video, you may be like, but I will get there, I promise. The range of the costs is very high, but they shake out to about $2.80 a fat quarter of the solids, which I was surprised. That's actually very affordable. So we're going to use 9 of those according to the pattern. So $2.80 times 9, that's $25.20. 3 yards of backing, which if you're like me and you want to do a fun backing and you go like Ruby Star Society Starry, that's about $12 a yard. So that's $36. And then binding is half a yard. And again, if you want a really fun and interesting binding, that's going to be in the $12 a yard. If you're going, just wait. So that's $6. Let's say you either are ill-equipped or don't want to, quilt your own quilt, and you're going to use a long arm service. Affordably, pantograph or edge to edge or non-custom quilting is 2 cents per square inch. 2 cents per square inch. Now in your area it might be higher, so that may be your circumstance, but our circumstance is 2 cents. And so the quilt shakes out to be 46 inches by 46 inches times 2 cents is $42.32. Let's say you have to also purchase batting. I'm going to go a little on the high side because, so let's say $15 for your batting. Let's say you have to ship it to your long armor because you don't have a long armor in your area. And when she gets it, it has creases in it from shipping. And she's going to charge you $15 per side for pressing. So $30 for pressing and $10 for thread. All of that added together is $184.50. And that is for a 46 by 46 inch baby size Geo Gems quilt. Now, I can hear all of because I myself am doing this. Well, okay, but my long armor doesn't charge a thread charge. My long armor doesn't charge for pressing. I don't have to ship it. I can drive it across town. There are 1,000 places that can be cheaper. And so this is the beauty of recruiting my friend who is budget friendly to actually make the quilt. So let me show you the quilt she made, and we're going to talk about how she saved some money doing her bargain shopping and what would be probably a more reasonable set of costs for a baby quilt. So here it is. Here's the quilt that she made. This is her Geo Gems. And just side note, we tried initially to match the shirts that I have to the fabric bundle that she picked, and quickly abandoned the idea because it's just kind of hard to do. But then you'll see it ends up being pretty funny. But these were her choices from the Wildflower Hill bundle. Again, curated by Christina West. I always want to give her the wrong last name, of Kindred Quilt Company. It is a beautiful bundle, y'all. It's gorgeous. And please do not hear me say I'm anti-quilting cottons. I love them. And I am just like everybody else. God help me if I ever go to the fabric store, because I could just go hog wild crazy. But this is what she chose. And you can see it's like a 3 by 3 block, which is 9 individual blocks. And this was the completion. So here are her costs. Let me move my little chickens. Aren't those just the cutest, y'all? All right, I'm gonna do that. Okay, so curated fabric bundle on sale, $52.83. She used 7 of them because we modified, we didn't modify the pattern. We just went with a background. So the pattern calls for this space right here is print, and these components, design element, I don't know, were actually supposed to be solid. And then the corners used the same solids from this piece. So we obviously changed that up a little bit, how we decided to lay it out. And so we're going to do that, what we actually used. So she used 7 fat quarters from her curated bundle. So it was $52.83 divided by 16. That's $3.30 a fat quarter. So already cheaper, times 7. So that's $23.10 for the actual fabric bundle part. Then for the back, it called for 3 yards of fabric, which she did do. She used a Art Gallery Fabric Solid, which was on sale. So instead of the $12 a yard, it was $9.06 a yard. So that came out to be $29.01 with tax. And then this background fabric that we decided to go with instead of using the print here, she had 1.5 yards of really nice muslin that matched and was going to be complementary to the other fabrics. And so she used that. So there was, net zero on that. It's just leftover fabric that she already had. And this is what we do as quilters. You may get a fabric bundle for your fun prints, but you may have background fabric already left over from another project. So that is, in fact, what happened here. She did purchase the binding at a 1/2 yard, but it was $4 a yard instead of the big whopping 12. And so that was on sale. And so that was $2 for her binding. And then she has a wonderful long armor that she's been using for a long time named Vicky. Again, I always say this, but the pattern, all of the resources and things that I talk about in the video will be in the description box. So she charged her for the long arming, which is the 2 cents. So that comes out to be $42.32. And then because she gets batting in bulk, her batting was $9.50. And so this whole quilt, this whole baby quilt comes totaled at $105.93. So $105.93. And I think that would be a more reasonable experience for a lot of us. We might buy fat quarters. We might have some leftover fabric. We might shop the sales because fabric is expensive. So I think this is a far more reasonable sort of price. Now, one of the qualifications, if you are shopping your stash and you have already long purchased fabric and it's been spent 10 years ago, or if you're using scrap fabric, obviously it's going to be far cheaper than $184 or $105. So you may be hearing this going, well, I'm using all leftover fabric. If that is the case, then maybe thrift store shopping is not going to be the way for you to save money. And that's awesome. That's fantastic. So $106 versus the $185 if you went just like had all the money in the world and went hog wild crazy. So that's that. Now, here's the tricky part. Trying to figure out how much each element costs from a shirt was the puzzling part kind of for these last 2 years. If you use a shirt back, how much does that cost? So I want to show you the method that I used to try to determine the cost associated with a shirt. So here before me, we have a shirt back. Now, I intentionally chose a large shirt. This is basically the smallest size shirt that I buy, unless it is on sale, or it's a fabric that I just absolutely love. And the reason for that is this is where it starts being really cost effective. So large or greater is typically what I look for. Usually long sleeve because there is so much in the sleeve. So my baseline is large or bigger with long sleeves. I have done a lot of adding up and averaging, and because I've been doing this for a while, I generally pay $6 on average for a shirt. Now, I have bought shirts for 50 cents and I have bought shirts for 99 cents and I have had shirts given to me. I have also bought shirts 7, 8, 9, 10, and I have spent more than that on denim and flower shirts. I have a love affair with denim and flower shirts. So I have paid more and I have paid significantly less. I estimated high. It is very possible that my true average is far less than 6, but just being on the safe side, I went kind of high, $6 for a shirt. If you are someone who cannot get a shirt for $6 in your thrift store, this is not going to apply to you, and I'm so sorry. West Coast folks, Upper East Coast, and Canadians, and some of you folks in the UK, you're like, I wish, and I get it. So if you're looking at this and you're going to go, well, our shirts are $12 a yard or $12 a shirt, so it's not any savings. Correct. But if you are like me and you're in the South and you have a lot of affordable shirts, then this is a not outrageous price, $6 for a shirt. And I can get them for a lot less if I'm really bargain shopping. So you're going to probably find yourself on the whole continuum of prices there. They have gone up. For those of you that are like, it used to be $2 and now it's 10. Yep, it is. So the cost savings is obviously going to depend on how much you can purchase your shirts for and maybe the extent to which you're willing to bargain shop. So it might be digging through big bins at the Goodwill outlet, whatever. So $6 for me, and we'll talk about variety a little bit later. So this is a shirt back. This is a fat quarter. And you can see it's not that far off. So this just gives us all kind of a frame of reference, right? So shirt back that's a large or larger is going to be at least a fat quarter. And you could, there's a lot more. This is a 2.5 inch ruler. And if I would shimmy this down over and down a little bit, I would have a 18 inch, 2.5 inch wide strip. But for argument's sake, fat quarter. All right, now let me show you the shirt fronts. Okay, so I have the two shirt fronts together on top of the fat quarter that I just showed you. And so obviously it too is a little more than a fat quarter, especially if you don't do what I did here, which is get crazy with the seam reaper and rip through the pocket hole, which I absolutely did. this is the stage that you go, okay, so a couple of fat quarters. If you're in your head already doing the math, if a fat quarter is $3.50 and I pay $6 for a shirt, right? So this 2 fat quarters is $7. I'm already cheaper. But it depends on how you use it in the quilt. And then I want to also point out, this is not all there is to the shirt. So it would be tempting to say that half the shirt is the front and half is the back. But let me show you how that is actually not true. So this is what a sleeve looks like. This is actually a probably double XL sleeve, so it's gigantic. It's hard to get a feel for how much fabric is there, but I wanted to show it to you because I actually cut the other shirt pieces and I didn't want you to wonder what I had done there, what sort of voodoo I had done. I've done a whole video on this, but shirt sleeves have so much more fabric than you would think, or than one would think. And so I want to demonstrate that for you now. So here is a sleeve that I have trimmed off the kind of funky little part, the little cuff part. All right, so that, well, actually, let me do it like this. So that's one sleeve. And here's the larger part. So the largest part of the sleeve, here it is, laid out, right? So very close to a fat quarter to begin with. If you take the parts that I cut off, you will see, so here's the one section of one sleeve. And here's the one section of the other sleeve. And you can see how, for some reason, I'm having a hard time with that. All right, so also a fat quarter. Now, this is one of those qualifications. If it's a directional print, like this is, obviously that's not exactly shaping up to be a fat quarter. So this is the apples to oranges thing. Also, we have the yolks still to go. So that's this part right here that adds additional fabric. So for my purposes, I'm considering this. So this is a third of the shirt. The 2 shirt fronts are a third, and the back is a third. I hope you can see that because those really roughly come out to about the same amount of fabric. Now you're gonna lose all these curved places and funky, but basically the shirt fronts together, the shirt back together, and the sleeves with or without the yoke is about a third of the whole shirt. So that's how I used, that's the formula that I used to determine how much of a shirt I use and therefore how much it cost. That's really been one of the hiccups in the last 2 years trying to figure out how to demonstrate this is, okay, I get if I use a shirt back, that's like a fat quarter, but what if I use a sleeve or 2 sleeves? So that's the formula that I'm going to use to calculate how much my quilt cost by using shirts. All right, so here is my quilt, and I made the entire quilt with shirts. And I also used, I started to say used batting, but that's not it. That would mean I would have to take a quilt apart and use the batting that had already been sewn into a quilt. Leftover batting. So all of the batting strips from previous projects, I stitched them together using a feather stitch on my little, I call it my baby machine, my baby brother. It's just a domestic machine, but my little baby brother serves beautifully the purpose of feather stitching batting strips together. And so the batting that's in this quilt is Franken batting, which if you're in the UK, do y'all call that Franken wadding? Franken batting. So for those of you that are familiar, it's just, you know, batting strips that have been sewn together with a zigzag stitch. I use a feather stitch, and then to make the whole thing. So I used that I used all shirts, front and back, and batting. And binding. Backing, batting, and binding, and background. Good Lord. It's like today's video is brought to you by the letter B. Thank you, Sesame Street. Or was that Electric Company? Sesame Street. So I'm going to leave this out, and I want to show you and let you know, read to you what my costs were. All right, so we're going to work with $6 a shirt. And if the back is a third and the two fronts are a third and the sleeves are a third, then that's the cost. So for each one of these elements, or each two, I should say, so these two pink gingham, these two orange gingham, these two pink, and these two purple, I used 2 sleeves to accomplish the whole thing. So 2 sleeves is a third, and if a shirt is $6, that's $2. So 2, 4, 6, 8, $8 for each of the ones. I used 1 sleeve for the yellow in the center. So if 2 sleeves is $2, then 1 sleeve is $1. So I spent $9 on these little elements of the quilt top. The little corner pieces, for one of them, I used a yoke and half a sleeve. That's it. So I really struggled with how to get a cost on that, because you saw me lay the yokes and the sleeves out. I'm just going to say it's the equivalent of a sleeve, even though it was a yoke and a half a sleeve. So that's $1. The other yellow pieces, there was more of them. I used a whole sleeve and a yoke. So a whole sleeve would be $1. I don't know how much a yoke is. I tacked on 50 cents. So that's $1.50 and $1. So $2.50 for these little pieces in the center. And then I used 1 single double XL white shirt for the whole front. Now, I want to tell you, I nearly laid awake at night trying to figure out how to get all of these pieces out of that white shirt. I sat on the couch and stared, and spatial relations is not my gift. So it was a struggle, but it was a very, very large shirt, which I actually paid $5.99 for. So it really, really was $6. And I just kind of maneuvered it and made it work. And so I used 1 single shirt. So that's $6. So if you're doing the math, which we are doing the math, the whole quilt top, including the background, there's that B again, $18.50, which is pretty great. So I was very excited about that. I do feel like I need to say at this point, some of you may be saying, well, I can't get pink shirts at my thrift store. And I've lived in the Midwest. I don't know that I've ever seen a pink man's shirt when I lived in the Midwest. So that just means if you want to do a quilt top with pink, you're not going to get those cost savings from thrifted shirts. You're just going to have to get it at the fabric store. But you could make this exact same quilt top with blues, and your cost savings is back. And I know that because I have the exact same quilt top behind me in blues. And so that's blue shirts, all blue shirts, and the light blue that's in the center was remnant fabric that I have. So you might not be able to make an Easter egg Geo Gems quilt top from your thrift store because you don't live in the American South, but you can still have cost savings. It just may not be on pink fabric. So, all right, I do want to show you the back of this because this is some crazy savings, and it's just because I don't like to waste. So each of those elements on the front uses snowball corners. And I took the time for once in my life and did the extra stitch and created all these half square triangles and decided, maybe wisely, maybe foolishly, it was time consuming, but it is on the cheap, to save them and use them in the back. And so that's what you see before you is all of the leftover half square triangles from the front I used on the back. And I did that because I knew that that would save some money. And I thought it would also be pretty. So then the blue that's surrounding it is also a shirt. So it's actually one whole shirt and one shirt back. So that's $6 for the shirt and $2 for the shirt back. So a whopping $8 for the backing. If you need a reminder, if you were going to go buy Ruby Star Society Starry and put it on your back of your quilt, it would be $36. So this was $8. And then for the binding, I did use a shirt, and it took a shirt back. No, I'm sorry, a shirt back and a shirt front. So that is, shirt back is $2 and one shirt front is $1. So when you add all of that up together, this whole entire quilt, I did not factor in thread, by the way, for Jennifer's quilt or for my quilt. Her long armor did not charge her for it. I used leftover thread not leftover, but thread that I already had. So I didn't do a thread charge. $28.50. $28.50. That is crazy. That is crazy. I just can't get over that. And that's for this little quilt right here. And if you need to see again, so this is Jennifer's quilt, mine on the table. There is some remarkable similarity, especially considering that I used shirts. Oh, I didn't say I quilted it myself. So there's no long armor charge. And let me tell you, I decided that I wanted to do some sort of curved quilting because it's very angular. The rest of the quilt design is very angular. But I really didn't have it in me to do the free motion quilting. And so I used my walking foot and did orange peel quilting with my walking foot. If you follow me on Instagram, you probably saw, I actually put that on Instagram. And there was some interest in how I did that. So the blue Geo Gems behind me, I put together, we're going to have a tutorial, even though I'm the worst quilter in the world and we hates it. But it actually worked and it was not really hard. And so I'm going to do a tutorial video on how to do orange peel quilting with your walking foot, and going to use the Geo Gems behind me, which is why that's there. So that was an additional savings. Forgot to mention that. You're probably thinking, why? But I just forgot to mention it. So you can see the similarities there. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. They're very similar. Now, my quilting is a far cry from the professional services that Vicki did. She just did a beautiful job with this panto, and it looks great. But it is significantly cheaper. So really, in the end, we're looking at a difference of $105.93. So round up to 106. Minus $28.50, round up to $29, so a $77 savings by using thrifted material. Now, the great thing about this, again, you may not be able to get pink shirts at your thrift store. You may not be able to get $6 shirts at your thrift store, but there's lots of savings to be had. If I had not done the shirts and the half square triangles on the back, I have thrifted sheets that I bought for $2.99. So if I had gone with a solid, I'm sorry, y'all, I'm doing the picking again. I have a solid white sheet that I paid 99 cents for. So again, there is savings there, even if you don't use shirts. And so, yeah, if you haven't bought into the idea that discounting a shirt because of the amount of the shirt that I used versus like, buying a fat quarter, even if I counted the whole shirt toward the quilt. So I just did this for fun, just like right before we started this video. So I used a total of 9 different fabrics. The blue shirt on the back, I used the equivalent of 2 of them. So that would be 10 total shirts that I used. And at $6 a piece, that is obviously $60. So if you don't want to give me the portions of shirt and you want to just give me credit for the whole shirt, that's $60 versus $105. So it's still a $40 savings, even if you don't count your part shirts and just count the whole shirt. Like, well, you have to buy the whole shirt. Okay, I'll give it to you. That would be $60. So I hope my Tale of Two Quilts project / experiment has been fun and interesting and eye-opening for you. I hope it maybe gives you one more nudge to go check out your thrift store and see what kind of glorious fabrics you can find there to use in your quilting. I'm Kathy Martin. This is the Catbird Quilts. Thanks so much for watching.